Hey guys, what I'm about to tell you might be the best stock advice you can receive. Well, it might not too, but I'm going to try and give you some things that I wish I knew prior to when I started. And I think it really would have helped me understand, and it really would have helped me get way ahead much quicker in my journey of investing. I'm going to give you a few really good tips that hopefully will help you in your journey. Stick around. Stock tip number one: for the love of God, just get in. Many of us spend way too much time so worried, so concerned. Oh my gosh, what if I'm doing the wrong thing? What if I'm buying the wrong thing? Is it going to go bankrupt tomorrow, etc., etc., etc.? Just jump in. Now, I don't say just jump in and jump at anything foolishly, but stop worrying about what you're going to get into and get into it. That's the worst thing that I did was I sat on the sidelines for way too long. Meanwhile, the market was up, the market was down, the market was up, the market was down. One of the things you're going to learn very quickly is the market goes up some days, the market goes down some days. Stock tip number two kind of builds on stock tip number one. And that is if you're unsure about individual stocks or fearful, because you may be, look at ETFs. ETFs or exchange traded funds are a fund that holds many other individual stocks. And that's one of the things that I started with when I finally did get in because I was very concerned about individual stocks. I purchased ETFs. A great example, you can look at the S&P 500 or you can look at the TSX 60. And if you look at the contents or the stocks that are in the TSX 60 ETFs, you'll see all the individual stocks listed in there. You'll see a very good number of energy companies. You'll see financial companies, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a very large, obviously 60 different individual stocks in that one ETF. And what that does is it allows someone else to manage that fund so that if one particular company in that fund is not doing as well as they feel it should or as others, then they can modify that, selling some of those stocks and purchasing others that are doing better in hopes to return a better return to you as the investor. So now building on stock tip number two, I might even call this tip number 2B or 3. Once you're involved with any ETF, you'll find that you're going to start watching that ETF day in and day out because this is your hard earned money and you want to see it do well. But you'll also gain an understanding of all of the individual stocks that are within that ETF. And that's exactly what happened to me. I, for example, was in a TSX 60 stock, and I did start to look at the financial companies, the energy sector, and all those other different companies that are within the TSX 60. And I found myself following those stocks a little bit more often, knowing that they were all in that ETF that I was a part of. What I ultimately ended up doing was selling my ETF. And I started to invest in a number of those companies that are in the TSX 60. Now, was that the smart thing to do? Was it the wrong thing to do? Well, nobody really ever knows. But I did gain a confidence and an understanding of some of the things I needed to look at within those individual companies. And it allowed me to make a more educated decision. And it's one that I don't regret. And this is not saying that I don't think ETFs are good because they are, but I got that confidence where I was not as fearful as I was originally in investing in one of those individual companies. Stock tip number 4. This might be the most important one is to never let someone else influence what it is that you want to accomplish in investing. At the end of the day, we all want to get gains on our money. But within the stock market, there's so many different ways to do that. I'm just going to talk about a couple of examples of that. We want to purchase a stock or we want to purchase an ETF at a fixed price. And over time, we want that price to increase for us. And at some point down the road, sell that stock at a profit, obviously. But there's also other options of stocks that may not make you as much money over that time, but they may pay you a dividend as well. And a dividend is a company paying you out of their profits, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi annually, or annually. They will actually send you money for holding their stock. So, is it better to invest in a company that just increases in share price, or is it better to invest in a company that pays you out dividends? Well, that's completely up to you. What is it that you want to get out of this? Because there really isn't a right answer to that. There really isn't a wrong answer to that. Another thing that you'll find is a lot of people will compare what is called the yield or the return or the dividend, excuse me, of a company. So some companies might pay out a 10, 12, 14% monthly, quarterly, semi annual, or annual dividend. And some companies might pay out a 2% dividend. Well, obviously, we would all want to have the higher dividend. However, there's usually something behind that, or there's a reason, or you're trading off something else to get that high dividend. And these are the sorts of things that you need to investigate. So, just to wrap this tip up, you're looking at, do you want to be paid out regularly by the company, or do you just want your original purchases to drastically increase over time? Totally your call. And my final tip, number five, is also one that I think is very, very important. A lot of people ask, it seems, is it better to purchase over time, or is it better to put a lump sum in and buy right now? Again, there isn't really a right or wrong answer to that. However, I do kind of lean one way, and that is the purchase over time. And an example of that, let's say we have $1,000, and I'm talking about plopping $1,000 right now on a single stock or ETF, or plop $100 down every month or every 2 weeks until that $1,000 is spent. One of the things that I like to see, as I said earlier, the stock market consistently goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. And again, there isn't really a right or wrong answer to that. But again, it's a preference. The preference that I like is to see those purchases when the stock prices go up and when they go down. And what happens is you get a dollar cost average with those fluctuations in the prices when you buy. But nobody's stopping you from looking at the market and watching a stock. And every time it does dip, as they say, or drop in price, buying then. Again, no right or wrong answer, but be consistent with your investments. And over time, you will see that the stock market, as I said, always it does go up and it does go down. But if you look at longer periods of time, it goes up far more often than it does go down. So that's my best five tips that I can offer you for getting into the stock market. Just to recap, number one, get in. There's no time like now. Number two, if you're unsure of any individual stocks, start with ETFs and look at the different companies that are within those ETFs. Tip number three, once you've got a little bit of an understanding of all the different individual stocks within those ETFs, you can expand out and invest into individual stocks if you choose, or you can stay with the ETFs if you're happy with them. Tip number four, decide what it is that you want. Do you want pure growth out of the stock? Do you want growth with dividends? Look into both and see what best fits your needs. And last, and just as important as all the other four, be consistent with your investing. You can put your money in and just set it and forget it, but adding money all of the time into your investments allow you to gain that growth over time as the stock market grows a lot more than it declines. That'll wrap up this video. This has not been investing advice, rather just tips that I think can help you in your investing journey, and I wish I had when I first started out. I thank you for watching, and I would encourage you, if you've enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe and that like button. Until next time, take care and we'll talk to you soon.